Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Drop Frames. Phil, how's it going? Welcome to the show. Glad to have you here, man.
My first time on Drop Fames. I'm excited. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. This is one of those things where when we got contacted and they're like, "Yeah, would you like to have Phil on the show?" We didn't really know if it was going to be a real thing. I don't know if you're aware of this, but you're kind of a big deal in the gaming world, so it is our absolute pleasure to have you here, and we're really excited about it.
No, thanks. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think you do a good job. The thing I like is you're informative. You cover a lot of genres, a lot of games. I think you kind of stay in the space of let's just constructively talk about the art form of video games and what's going on, which I just think is fantastic, and we should have more of in our industry. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. Pleasure to, or glad to hear that.
Can we just end the show there?
Yeah, that's it. That's all.
It's gonna be all downhill. It's gonna be all just crap from here on out.
Can we use that quote on our DVD set when it comes?
Absolutely.
DVDs, nice. Living in the past.
Second only to our Laserdisc edition.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we only have you for a short time, and we got a lot of stuff we want to ask you. So I want to dive right into it. The internet is always kind of talking and wondering. Phil, there's been a lot of discussion over this, so I'm just gonna come at you with the hardest hitting question that I can right out of the gate. What's your max bench right now? What you obviously lift. There's no doubt about it. You could probably take all of us easily. So what's your bench up to these days?
The funny thing is, I do go and work out. I was there this morning. I don't actually bench very much, but I look at my like pictures of my grandfather, who was like this massively chested guy with these little like T-Rex arms sticking out, and it's basically like many things in our lives, all hereditary. So my physical, what I am, is just from my genes. That's it.
Nice. All right, there we go. The internet had to know. So no, but let's move on to the actual questions here. We're coming up on launch week. Obviously, super exciting time for the industry. Super exciting time for you guys at Xbox. What's the day to day like right now for you and the company? Are you guys checking up on console allocations with distributors, or is everything kind of set in motion at this point, and you're starting to look ahead to the future?
Yeah, all of our day one units are at retailers or are very close to that. I mean, we've seen some pictures on the internet of units on the shelf. So we've built all of our obviously day one allocations, and we know what our supply will look like basically for the rest of the year, just because the lead times in hardware. And we're going to have more demand than we do supply. And I'll apologize in advance to people for that. We kind of saw it with pre-order, just like how much energy there was. And we were basically out in a couple of hours, which is unfortunate. And I think we're going to live in that world for a few months, that we're going to have a lot more demand than we do supply. So on the supply chain side, it's like, what can we do to get more inventory? But most of my energy is focused on the next couple of years. Yeah, that's where I'm spending most of my time right now.
The industry is constantly changing for the most part, but the idea of console hardware being released every couple of years is still a constant. For you guys at Xbox, what's different this time around compared to the past, and what are your goals for the brand this generation?
Yeah, I try to keep us gold on the same things, which are how many people play in the Xbox community. And I mean that if somebody's playing on PC and they're connected to Xbox Live and are playing one of our first party games, obviously if they're on our console, they're in our community. Now with xCloud, we're even, we have some players on mobile devices and stuff. It's the goals I try to keep the team really charging against. How many people are playing? How are they enjoying it? How often are they playing? And not to try to get overly prescriptive about where they're playing, on what version of what device. It's really just, can we make Xbox as kind of inclusive and engaging to as many people, as many gamers as possible.
Do you look at like past, consoles and constantly compare, it 360 was at this point at this time, or are you just constantly looking ahead? Like, is it not worth even comparing console to console in that way?
I'm laughing because I literally just came out of my one-on-one with Andrew Goosen, who's one of our graphics kind of graphic architects, and we were both chuckling about where we were in what we call Durango, which was the code name for the launch of the original Xbox One, compared to where we are now on the Scarlet generation, and we are months ahead of where we were on the previous generation from a development platform. Like when I was running first party at the time with Durango, and the teams were working hard. It's not an effort thing, but I would say we were kind of building the landing gear as the plane was coming down on Durango. And for those that were building games for the Xbox One launch, it was a challenge. And the development platform, we still have work to go do on our development platform, but I feel like we're months and months ahead from that perspective, which is good because we want developers to have as easy of a time as they can building games on a new platform, taking their feedback and growing. And it's good because we're seeing a lot of games in development right now already doing some amazing things with the technology.
Awesome. I don't want to hog all the questions. So Zeke, I know you had one.
Sure. Not to like blatantly kiss your ass or anything, but Game Pass.
Here we go.
Game Pass
All right, let's go ahead and yeah.
I'm not to do exactly what I'm about to do, but I'm about to do it. Here we go. Hold on, let me get some chapstick here. No. Game Pass is really amazing as far as like getting games for cheap. Like I do a lot of indie games and stuff, and whenever I do one, I say who developed it, who published it, and the price tag. And they're like, and many people are very apt to tell me like when they're like, it's on Game Pass right now. I'm like, and it happens constantly. Now let me read my script here. It says, I didn't want to mess up the question. Game Pass has become the gold standard for playing new or much desired titles on the cheap. How much of your time is spent on deciding how to keep it that way and what content to acquire?
Yeah, love that. I mean, it's one of the best parts of my job is looking at new games in development. I just did that this week, looking at the roadmap over the next few years, because we get really good insight from both our big third-party publishing partners, but as well as you talk about, so much of what happens on a console now is actually coming from independent developers, where 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. Everything came through a traditional publisher. So you've got your publisher relationships and your studio team relationships, and trying to look at what bets we're going to go make. The things I like to highlight in Game Pass are the unexpected surprises. The game, like I'm playing The Tourist right now, which is just fantastic. If people haven't played Tourist, it's awesome game. And finding games that can find an audience through many different means, because we know when we talk to indie developers, discoverability is their biggest challenge, whether it's on Xbox or PlayStation or Steam or anywhere. How do you just get known? So if we can offer in Game Pass an opportunity for a game to find a player that it might not have found, and consequently the player to find a game that they might not have found, and find something new to start playing, that's to me, that's what Game Pass is about. Is discovering, it's our cheesy kind of line, discover your next favorite game. But I kind of mean that. Like, go find a game that you might not have picked up if retail was the only choice and give it a try.
Oh, okay. So that kind of leads perfectly to something I wanted to ask you. So first of all, quick comment first. We had Brian Fargo on the show a while back. Extremely cool, candid, and open gentleman. We had a great interview. And one of the really interesting things we talked about him with, and just to say, I think a lot of people kind of felt this initially when Microsoft's a big company. It's been acquiring studios, and In Exile, one of my favorite studios for a long time, it got picked up by Microsoft. And of course, many of us were kind of like, what does this mean? That it can go so many different directions. So it was so great when we had him on, and he just kept saying about, like how many more doors had been opened. Like some of my favorite parts about the game, the music and stuff had been inspired by the support that you guys had given him and things of that nature, which is great. And tying in, interestingly enough, about to what you just said, we just heard today that Wasteland 3 has passed 1 million active players. Like, to think as a CRPG fan that we would be here, like, is just incredible. And I'm sure Game Pass has a big reason to thank for that. But one kind of question to bridge that gap between, Brian and yourself is like, how has the reception been overall to Game Pass on a developer level. Traditionally, sales have been tracked by units and things of that
Yeah.
nature. And now in this new world, it's completely different. So how does that conversation go?
Yeah, you can imagine it's varied. And there are people who really love the players that they find in Game Pass, and some of them are public about that. And you can go look at the accounts. And I'll be honest, there are developers that have some concerns, and my inbox is there, and I have conversations with a lot of those developers asking what are our real long-term goals. We get questions about, hey, is this just some kind of go secure a bunch of players and then rack the price up to a new level? I said there's no plan for us to do anything like that. We like the value that Game Pass is today, and from a business model, it's completely sustainable the way it is. And I mean that, like that is it is. But anytime you change the model, and I think this is healthy for people who have been in our industry, especially people who are running creative studios, to ask some questions. Does this diminish the value of a game if people aren't paying for a game? And what does that mean in the long run? If everybody starts subscribing, how do we get games greenlit? The number of platforms that games get developed for are going to go down because of this. And I'm right there with them. It's not like I've got a crystal ball and I can tell somebody what Game Pass is going to look like in 5 years. What I can say is our motivation is not to turn everybody into a subscriber. We think it's an option for people. We're not pulling our games out of retail. In fact, we've expanded. We put them in Steam. We have some games in EGS. Like, we're out there giving people more options to go buy our games. We obviously support free-to-play games, which don't have a big role today in Game Pass. But that dialogue with creators around questions that they might have, I think, is a real healthy one. And I don't shy away from the questions I get. The biggest question is usually around long-term value of content. And what does this mean? And I think those are good, healthy questions. The upside is we can take more creative chances than a pure retail model allows. We can go and greenlight games because we know we'll get millions of Game Pass players to engage and play the game. Where if it was purely driven a greenlight based on how many units or revenue you might gain, like just from that title, it can be more challenging. And that's, I think, the positive side of it is it allows us to take more creative risks. And I think the portfolio shows that, but we have to prove that over time as well.
Very cool.
When you look at the idea of Game Pass and what that's kind of done for Xbox in the past couple of months, even just kind of almost out of nowhere, it just exploded, and everyone talks about, oh yeah, that game's on Game Pass, as Zeke was referencing earlier. When it comes to developers, are you seeing anyone developing games with the idea that Game Pass is going to be the thing that gets it out to the masses? Does Game Pass come first before the idea from a developer, essentially?
Yeah, even just going to Co's question, even when I'm answering a question, I have to be careful because there are studios now that are pitching us games that really only kind of work in a Game Pass model. And what I've said for the longest time publicly, and I believe this, is I'm not creating Game Pass to take options away from people. Like, you can go buy Tell Me Why at retail. You can go buy Flight Sim at retail. And I think it's healthy that our industry has multiple business models. But I'll be honest, there are developers and studios that are coming and building almost a specific model that works in a subscription, where it's hard to think about how that translates exactly to a retail model. And I want to entertain those ideas. Because I think creativity and people pushing on what some of the traditional boundaries of what a game is and how game distribution and kind of revenue should work is a good, healthy thing. So yeah, absolutely, we're getting ideas. Even something like Tell Me Why and its the episodic nature of that game was something that was really built around a Game Pass model. Because traditionally, there have been some examples counter to this, but traditionally, episodic games at retail can struggle because your funnel just gets smaller with every version. And we didn't see that with Tell Me Why. We saw really good engagement across all 3 chapters, which is awesome.
Sure.
But that's a model that's influenced by Game Pass. So I want to say everything's available everywhere. But some of the ideas that come in are almost very specific to a subscription. And it makes us think about how other people who don't want to subscribe would also get to play.
Sure. Do you worry at all about you know, you kind of look at where TV and like Netflix is right now, where there's so many different Netflixes out there. Do you worry about the game industry becoming there's so many game passes out there, where that's kind of the main business of games, a subscription service ultimately?
Yeah, it's interesting in the video space because I don't think we've ever seen more money going in to TV production than we are right now. Like if you look at what Netflix is spending and Disney is spending and Amazon, blah blah, you can go down the list. We're seeing a real investment into the creative teams that are going and building some pretty amazing things, which I think is an awesome part of what that subscription at least has brought in the video space. The challenge is now I've got like 6 or 7 video apps. I'm on CBS, so I can watch my Star Trek, and I've got my Netflix. I mean, and that the appification of television, I don't know. It hasn't helped me from a usability standpoint. So when we think about gaming, this is why like the experiment or not experiment, the deal we have with EA of EA Play coming into Game Pass is I think an interesting opportunity for us to say, can Game Pass not just be a subscription for the games that we create and go and sign, but also a place where other people, other publishers or studios could have almost more of a vertical channel inside of Game Pass. So you didn't feel like you had to go from app to app to app to find the things that you want to go play. And we could do a better job of discovery of everything that you have available right now. I think that's both a Dash question in terms of how we highlight the games that you have, but also a Game Pass question. But yeah, we think a lot about that.
Sure. The Bethesda deal, it was one that I think no one really saw coming. I remember the day when that was announced. I think all three of us were like, wait, is this our Slack channel lit up like this? Did that really happen? Like there's
Microsoft, Christmas. I mean, wow.
Yeah, it took the industry by surprise. And so much has been said about it and about so many things around the deal and the idea of, an exclusive title these days. What does that mean? For you though, what's your take on the public's response to the deal?
I'll be honest, so it was a Sunday night. I couldn't sleep. I knew that we were gonna. I was on it,
I like the way you set it up like a novel.
I was
staring out at the rain.
I'm like, I'm a software engineer by trade. I come to Microsoft, and all of a sudden, I'm sitting here as the head of Xbox on the night before we're going to announce a $7.5 billion acquisition.
Right.
And I'm just laying there and like, what in the world? Like, this is how did this happen? And it was, it was both kind of daunting and challenging and exciting and all of those things. I think the reaction, the most important reaction to me has been from the teams at ZeniMax and hearing, and there'll be questions. What does it mean? We talked about it early. Microsoft's a big company. What does this mean? But Todd Howard and we've always had regular conversations, and Robert Altman, who's the CEO of ZeniMax. But I've stayed in touch with them after the announce and taken from them a pulse of what's happening on those teams. We're in the period where it's still being evaluated by some regulatory agencies. It should be all closed fairly early in 2021. But that was the most important thing to me is how are those teams feeling? And a little bit of like what you said and clearly there will be questions. So I'll go to a positive, but clearly in the end, we've got to prove out how we are as a partner for them. But the thing I love in talking to Todd is just people getting excited about the opportunity of being closer to a platform company, closer to a company like Microsoft with the resources that we have to help them. And what Todd shared with me is, he's looking forward to building the best games of his career. And he's asking me, what can we do as Xbox to help him do that? And if I can have those conversations with the best creators, whether they're part of our team or are an independent developer or a publisher, that's what it's all about.
Sure. I think you kind of had a follow up to that in the next question.
For sure. First of all, I just wanted to read a comment I caught from chat that I couldn't agree more. Phil, we hope you write a book someday about this, about like how this journey went from like software engineer to $7.5 billion deals. So not only talking about Bethesda, but like another company, Obsidian, one of my favorites that was recently acquired. One of the things that's kind of interesting about it is like how does Microsoft pitch this type of synergy with these companies? What do you offer them when you start with? Obviously, the money and financial stuff's involved, but like, kind of looking into a little bit of Brian Fargo's world and seeing kind of the intricacies of how he was able to do more. Is this the kind of thing you're hoping to do with like all the studios? And then you just mentioned the resources to Bethesda. Like, how does that relationship start and how does it evolve?
Yeah, one thing to remember is the games industry is actually, from a developer standpoint, not the largest industry. Like, we all kind of know each other, whether you're working on one of the other first parties or you're at a third party publisher. And I've been around this industry for, some will say too long, but long enough to know a lot of the people in the industry. So our first conversation is not our first conversation. These are people that we've known for quite a long time. I'd say and I don't mean to speak for them. So like Brian should talk for Brian and Tim should talk for Tim Schafer, and they should all have their own voice. What I find most often though is creators that started a studio because they wanted to create amazing games with great teams. And running a team, an independent studio today is difficult. You're doing a lot of business development. You're doing a lot of pitching. You're doing a lot of things that aren't really building video games. There's a lot of the other things that have to happen for games to get built. So usually when it works, and it's not every situation we're the right partner, or not every studio wants to be acquired. But when it does work, I think it's a leader or a creator who says, I want to get back to spending my cycles writing and designing and building great games. And I want a lot of that other stuff that I've had to do as the head of the company to be handled by Microsoft and Xbox. And we can free up the cycles they have to go build the great games. And then like when Brian was talking about, if it's a team that needs more time or they need more resources for something like music licensing or clearances, those are areas where we can really help. And I think those have been the best experiences for us, partners where we can alleviate some of the kind of overhead of what it means to be a studio and really have them focus on being the best versions of themselves they can be.
Awesome.
Just awesome.
Just as a follow-up, I just want to know, how awesome is it to be able to call up just a game studio head and like do what everybody wants to do and complain about something about their game? Like, you're like, Todd, no, I'm playing your game and I went through the wall.
We heard a story from Fargo, from Brian Fargo, when he was on the show, that you sent some QA emails when that game first launched, which I think Zeke is subtly hinting at.
It's one of the downsides of being with me on the team is I do play a lot and I have feedback. And yeah, a buddy of mine and I were still co-oping through Wasteland 3, which I just think the team at In Exile did a fantastic job on. And there were certain things in co-op which the team, they've gone and they fixed, but we were having the sync problem when we were both loading that we'd actually fail to load. But yeah, I come at this, and of course it'll sound like PR when I say it. I'm a guy who started playing video games with my dad when I was 5 years old, never thinking that this is the job I would have, but I play almost every night. I mean, it's what I do. My daughters, who are both now out of the house in college, that was part of my experience with them. And I just really believe in what video games can do in terms of bringing communities together and storytelling and giving a unique perspective that I don't have with my own lived experience in my life. So I just love this. But yeah, whether it's one of our teams or it's great to be able to know so many people in the community. And I try to use it as a force for good, not a force for evil. That's my goal. Hopefully I live up to that.
Sure. He was very positive about it. So I think in that situation, you were fine. Yeah. We started off. Go ahead, Zeke.
Honored to be getting the bug report.
Yes. Sorry, but that's true. That's true.
Well, there was one, and it actually came out this week, where I got the new build or I think it was last week, I got the new build of Gears 5 on the Series X from Mike Rayner and Mike Crump and the guys at the Coalition. And it felt different. And I'll be the first to say I've never felt great when I'm playing a third-person shooter. I find that it just doesn't feel as good as it should in my mind. And when I'm playing this game, it literally felt like almost a brand new game to me. So I sent a piece of mail. I'm like, what's going on? Because I am so much more in control of my characters in the game than I've ever felt in a Gears game. And then they built these graphs for us in terms of the latency differences, which I figured there were some, but I hadn't seen it in kind of numeric form like that. And then they actually ended up tweeting out some of the stats so the community could see it. So sometimes I'm actually praising the teams. It's not always that I'm finding a bug.
We talked about at the start of the interview, where you're at in terms of looking into the future. How far out are you and the team thinking right now in terms of, what's next hardware wise? And on the software side, how early are you brought into kind of the development of games? Are you seeing and discussing stuff that's, 4 years out, 5 years out, or what does that time look like?
Yeah, the hardware roadmap is the longest, just because hardware, and I say this as somebody who grew up building software, hardware is more difficult, the timelines, just because things are physical and they have assembly lines and all of those things. So, already the hardware team has obviously done their work on Series S and Series X, and I applaud the work that they've done. Really proud of the work that they've done, but already thinking about what we would do next with the teams, and really great conversations. Liz Hamrin is our leader on our platform team, and working with her and the teams on what's coming next has been great. On the game side, I'd say Matt Booty, who runs our first party studios, he has the job that I once had, and I'm conscious to not sit in there and kind of try to do both jobs. He's better as a first party head than I ever was. And enable him in the studios to go and look at things. I probably see things 2.5 years before they might come out. But I really want them to feel enabled. They greenlight the games. And I don't want to be the one that's dictating everything that should happen, because we have a lot smarter people than I in those positions that can go do that.
Do you feel like developers are eager to show you stuff, or is that the dreaded, like, oh, we got to show it to the big boss, right? Like this is the yay or nay situation.
You might have to ask them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing that you have to think about every time. Like, I have to think about how I show up. I don't want to be always positive. I don't want to be always critical. I need to strike a balance there. I want to add something. So if it's just meeting with me for some kind of checkbox thing, I'd rather just have the leader who owns that area of our to go and think about it, who owns it, to go drive. But if there's context that I can give or input, those are great conversations for us. And I aspire to always be a constructive part of the process. I hope they don't dread it, but maybe I'm not very self-aware
Sure.
In that. On the timelines, it was interesting just because I'm coming out of my one-on-one with Goosen that we just had. We were literally talking about back compat 7 years from now. That was the topic of our conversation as we're thinking about, hey, how would we do back compat in this, in the future? And because one of the things that we've just become known for is how we respect the games that have been built previously on our platform. And we want that to be a key component of where we're going. And some of those timelines are crazy long when you're making those kind of core architecture decisions in the silicon. So I was just thinking about that when you asked, some of the discussions happen way early,
Sure.
Which can be fun to think that far out.
Yeah, definitely. I know we're short for time, so a couple last questions here. Zeke?
I noticed your sweater, and I'm guessing it's probably, because of Grounded and Outer Worlds, but I think it's probably pretty much confirmed that Fallout New Vegas 2 is coming out. So can you just tell us when that's
happening? Here we go.
Breaking
news.
I'm trying to hide if there's something on my shelf there. I don't want to leak that Fallout New Vegas 2.
Wait a minute.
That would be fun.
Wait a minute. We actually have the power here. We can just zoom in on the shelves.
No.
Enhance.
I've had to take everything off of the. It's interesting when you look at the RPG capability though that we've amassed inside of our first party. It's some of the amazing creators in the history of RPGs. It's a genre that I love. So excited about what we'll be able to do. I'll just say that.
Nice. There you go.
Yeah, my 3 quick final thoughts is just if there's anything you can do to prevent another 76, you will eternally go down in history as the best ever. Awesome. Also, just if y'all are like having a dinner or something and you just kind of wanted to coyly slide the Fallout IP to Obsidian, just it's cool too. And also, I just want to say finally, you're an incredibly likable, well-spoken person. Xbox is very lucky to have you. Thank you for coming on today. This has been awesome. And just phenomenal answers, and really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. You guys have done a really cool job building the show, and it's an honor to be able to be on with you and keep being the way you are online. So, because I think it's great.
Fantastic. Appreciate that. Last question I got for you is, what are you excited most for in the coming weeks? Are you one to dive into the competitions lineup? Are you one to dive into your own? Like, what are you most excited for in the coming weeks?
Well, I'd say the thing I'm going to miss is the launch events with the fans, like, going to one of the stores and just being there. It's obviously not a safe time for us to go do that. It's unfortunate. We'll do some things online and virtual, and I hope they're great. But there's something about just the energy for any console launch. That's not an Xbox thing. Any console launch is just fantastic. And on the competition side, I'll say it. I wish my friends at PlayStation the best with their launch, Mark and Jim and everybody. And seriously, I want them to do a great job. The thing that I'm most looking forward to, I just got the preview build of Tetris Effect Connected.
Nice.
Miz is one of my good friends, and I know it's not the highest fidelity, but it's just a game when I saw it, and it's a game I've always loved, and now we get to bring it to Xbox with some kind of added functionality. I'm really looking forward to playing that. I was getting the preview build. I think it might be on my console now, and I haven't played yet, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Awesome. One last question. Did you get a PS5 pre-ordered? They were hard as hell to get, man. Like, obviously you can get the Xboxes, but did you get the PS5 pre-ordered? I was there right when it went live. It was tough.
Pre-orders, for both of us. Jim and I have actually had this discussion. Like you have these pre-orders and you want it to be a positive event for the community. And obviously it's hard. I mean, like I said, I think we were sold out in a couple hours. And then you say, well, what good was that? We end up with more frustrated people than kind of people that is. So, I think as an industry, we're going to have to rethink that in some ways, because the bots and everything else, it's not a great situation. And we've been doing debriefs with all of our retailers. Hey, are there things that we could do to make this better? Maybe we do it through the dash. I don't know. But anyway, I wish everybody the best through this launch. It's been obviously a challenging year. And the fact that the teams of all of us have been able to get the things done that they have is a testament to the commitment that the teams have.
Sure.
That must elicit such mixed emotions when it's like console sells out, which is phenomenal, but it's like, and you also know that it's sold out, so you can't get everyone that wants one. It's just like it's such a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
you're so right, Cody. Like, it's infuriating. I saw it. I think we sold pre-sold more consoles that day in Japan than we sold the whole year or something. Like, the volume was just crazy, and we had our pre-order in India and it sold out like instantly. We've hardly ever sold consoles in markets like that before, because we really took a global view. But the amount of angst I got from people who are really wanting to get into Xbox, and this was their opportunity. And we're going to build, like, from day one, every week, there's more and more consoles coming in. So, but I don't like having so many people who are disappointed. So that's something I got to think about.
Sure. Stuff.
This is just yes or no. Do you get celebrities, like, get Phil Spencer on the phone? I want an Xbox. Like, it's like, we have P. Diddy's people on the phone.
Does Keanu call you up?
Does that shit happen? I want to know, dude.
I will say,
Snoop Dogg got an Xbox fridge, and you're going to ask him that?
Snoop's been with us for a long time. Like, people who followed us, they know Snoop has been with us for a long time. I will say, the amount of free stuff that rich people want is crazy. So what I tell them when they ask me is, I say, hey, I sent your free Xbox to the Boys and Girls Club, and I'll send them a link to the store where they can go buy one. Like, I think rich people want a lot of free stuff, but it's, I want the consoles to go where they should go. So I'll just leave it at that.
Honorable.
Fantastic. At the end of the shows, we always let our guests do shout outs. So whatever you feel like shouting out, Phil, this is your moment, by all means.
Yeah, I just say shout out to all the gaming community that's seen gaming as a great outlet for them during a year where so many of us have had challenge. I know there's some toxic corners of the gaming community all up, but in general, it's been an amazing time to see people using gaming as a way to stay connected to friends and family, and just showing their love of this industry that I get to be a part of. So thanks for that.
Awesome stuff. Phil, I know we kept you a little bit over, so apologies for that. Thank you so much for coming on Drop Frames. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
All right.
Guys,
that's it for the show. Thanks so much for watching Drop Frames. We'll be back next week with more coverage of the latest and greatest. We'll see you guys then. We're out of here.